I want to start by saying I am not a superstitious person. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in curses. I believe in facts, in evidence, in things you can see and touch and prove. But after what happened to me in the summer of 2022 in a small suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, I don't know what I believe anymore. This is the story of my neighbor, Gerald Hatch, a man who lived alone for 30 years, a man nobody really knew, a man who, according to the county death records, died 6 weeks before I ever met him. Welcome to Grim Feed Files. Let's look at the evidence.
My wife Dana and I moved to Ellsworth Drive in June of 2022. It was one of those quiet, tree-lined streets where every house looked the same. Beige siding, 2-car garage, a mailbox with the house number stenciled in black. We got a good deal on the place, really good. Our realtor, a cheerful woman named Karen Briggs, kept emphasizing how motivated the seller was, how quickly they wanted to close. We didn't ask too many questions. We were 32 years old, first house, first mortgage. We were just excited. The house to our left was empty. Had been for a while, you could tell. The lawn was overgrown, the curtains were always drawn, and the mailbox was stuffed so full that envelopes had started spilling out onto the driveway. I made a mental note to ask Karen about it. The house to our right was Gerald's. I met him on our 3rd day there. I was carrying boxes from the moving truck and I heard a voice behind me. "You're the new family." I turned around. He was standing at the edge of his driveway, hands in the pockets of a brown cardigan, watching me. He was maybe 70, 75, white hair, pale skin, eyes that were a shade of gray I'd never really seen before, almost colorless, like water. "That's us," I said. "I'm Marcus Webb." He nodded slowly, didn't offer his name, didn't move from the edge of his driveway. "You have children?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. He nodded again, and then he said something that I wrote off at the time as just old man eccentricity. "Good," he said. "Children hear things adults don't." And then he turned around and walked back into his house. Door closed, that was it. I stood there holding a box of kitchen supplies, trying to figure out if I'd just been insulted. That night I told Dana about him. She laughed. "Sounds like every old man in every suburb ever," she said. She wasn't wrong. I let it go. But I noticed things after that. Small things. Gerald's lights never turned off. Not at midnight, not at 3 a.m., not at dawn. Every window in that house glowed, all night, every night. I started to wonder if he just slept with all the lights on. Some old people do. His car, a brown 1987 Buick LeSabre, was always in the driveway. Always. In 6 weeks of living next to him, I never once saw that car move. And he watched. That was the thing that got under my skin the most. Every time I came outside, to get the mail, to mow the lawn, to take out the trash, Gerald was there, standing in his driveway, or sitting on his porch, or visible through his front window, a gray shape behind the glass, always watching, always still. Dana thought I was being paranoid. "He's a lonely old man," she said. "You're the most interesting thing that's happened on that street in years." Maybe she was right, but there was something about the way he watched that didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like waiting. The first crack appeared in late July. I was at the Franklin County Courthouse, nothing dramatic, just sorting out a property tax question, when I got to talking with a clerk named Deb. She'd worked there for 20-something years and knew the system inside out. On a whim, I mentioned my street, Ellsworth Drive. Her expression shifted, just slightly, the way someone's face changes when they recognize a name they weren't expecting to hear. "Ellsworth Drive," she said. "Number 44. I'm at 46. Why?" She pulled something up on her screen, turned it slightly away from me. "Nothing," she said. "Never mind." I pressed her, politely, but I pressed her. She looked around, then lowered her voice. "The house at 44 has been flagged in our system. A welfare check request was filed in April. Nobody ever followed up properly because the system already showed the resident as deceased." I felt something cold move through me. "Deceased," I repeated. "Gerald Hatch died March 14th, 2022. At least that's what the death certificate says, filed by a nephew in Cincinnati. The estate was supposed to go through probate. She paused. Clearly something got confused somewhere. I drove home on autopilot. Gerald Hatch died March 14, 2022. I met Gerald Hatch on June 19, 2022. 3 months after he was supposed to be dead, he was standing in his driveway asking me if I had children. I sat in my car in my own driveway for 20 minutes before I went inside. Gerald's lights were on. Of course they were. I could see his shape through the front window, watching. I didn't tell Dana, not yet. I needed to think. I told myself there was a rational explanation. The death certificate was wrong, clerical error. It happened all the time. I needed to see it for myself. The certificate, the actual document. It took me 3 days to get a copy. Gerald Raymond Hatch, born September 3, 1948, died March 14, 2022. Cause of death, cardiac arrest, pronounced at 4:17 a.m. at Riverside Methodist Hospital, signed by 2 physicians. The death was real. The paperwork was real. So who was living next door to me? I started asking around the neighborhood, carefully, casually. The Petersons across the street had lived on Ellsworth Drive for 11 years. Betty Peterson, a retired school teacher, was the unofficial historian of the block. I caught her getting her mail one morning. "Gerald?" she said when I brought up his name. "Oh, poor Gerald. He passed away in the spring, March, I think. Such a shame. He'd lived there for 30 years, kept to himself, but he was harmless." "Have you seen him recently?" I asked. She looked at me strangely. "Seen him? Marcus, Gerald is dead." "Right, of course. I just thought, I've seen someone at the house. I thought maybe a relative was staying there." She shook her head firmly. "There's no one staying there. The house is supposed to be going through the estate process. Gerald's nephew is handling it from Cincinnati. Nobody's been in that house since Gerald passed." I looked at number 44. The lights were on. "Betty," I said carefully, "do you see the lights on in that house right now?" She squinted at it. "No," she said. "The place has been dark for months." I stared at her. Then I stared at the house. Every window was glowing. "You don't see that?" I said. She gave me the look people give you when they're deciding whether to be concerned about you. "I have to get inside," she said. "Nice talking to you, Marcus." She went in. I stood on the sidewalk. The lights in Gerald's house burned steady and bright. And then the front door opened. Gerald stepped out onto his porch. Brown cardigan, gray eyes. He looked directly at me across the lawn. And for the first time since I'd met him, he smiled. It was the worst thing I've ever seen. I went home and I told Dana everything. She didn't laugh this time. We sat at the kitchen table for a long time. I showed her the death certificate. I showed her the photos I'd taken of the house, the glowing windows, the Buick that never moved. She looked at them for a long time. "Maybe it's someone who looks like him," she said, but her voice was uncertain. "Betty Peterson doesn't see the lights," I said. "She's lived across from that house for 11 years, and she looked right at it and saw nothing." Dana was quiet. "I want to call the police," she said. We did. 2 officers came out. They listened to everything I said. Then one of them went and knocked on Gerald's door. No answer. He peered through the front window. "Sir," he said to me, "there's no lights in there. Place looks empty." "Look again," I said. He looked again, shook his head. The other officer was watching me with that expression, the concerned one. "Mr. Webb, the resident of this property passed away earlier this year. Have you been under a lot of stress lately?" "I know what I'm seeing," I said. They left. Gerald watched from his porch the whole time. Neither officer looked at him once. That night I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m. I got up and went to the window. Gerald was in his driveway, standing still, looking up at our bedroom window. I watched him for a long time. Then I noticed something. He wasn't breathing. There was no breath mist in the cold night air. It was July, yes, but it was cool enough that I could see my own breath fogging the window glass. Gerald produced nothing. No mist, no movement, just absolute stillness, like a photograph of a man, like something wearing the shape of one. In the morning, I made a decision. I was going inside that house. I want to be clear. I know this was stupid, but I needed to know. I went on a Tuesday afternoon while Dana was at work. The back door was unlocked. It opened easily, like it had been left that way on purpose. The inside of the house smelled like dust and something older, like paper, like basements, like time. The furniture was all there, but everything had a thin coat of dust on it, the kind of dust that takes months to accumulate. In the kitchen there was food on the table, a plate, fork and knife, a half-eaten meal. The food was not rotted, it was not fresh, it was dried out, desiccated, like something that had been sitting there for months, but never quite decomposed. I photographed everything. In the living room I found a stack of mail. On top was a handwritten note, index card, block letters. It read, "They always come back to check. That's how it finds them." I heard a sound upstairs, footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving across the ceiling above me. I left. I ran. I didn't stop until I was inside my own house with the door locked behind me. I sat on the kitchen floor and I looked at the photograph of the index card. They always come back to check. That's how it finds them. And I understood that the note had not been there for months. The dust on every surface was thick and undisturbed, but the note had no dust on it at all. It had been placed there recently. It had been placed there for me. We left Ellsworth Drive on a Thursday. I told Dana everything. She didn't question me. She just started packing. Our realtor, Karen Briggs, did not seem surprised when I called her. She processed everything very quickly, too quickly. On our last night in the house, we made one final trip back to collect the rest of our things. I saw Gerald one more time. He was standing in the street, directly in front of our house. It was 11 p.m. The street was empty. I stopped on the porch. He looked at me. "You're leaving," he said. "Yes," I said. He nodded.
Same slow nod as the first day. "Smart," he said. "What are you?" I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. "Gerald Hatch died on March 14th, he said. "Cardiac arrest, 4:17 a.m. He was alone." "I know," I said. He was afraid. The thing wearing Gerald's face said, "They always are at the end. They call out, and something answers." It smiled again, that terrible smile. "The house needed someone," it said. "It always needs someone. You were curious. Curiosity is an open door." I picked up the last box. "Don't go looking," it said as I walked to my car. "The next ones won't be as lucky as you." I drove away. I did not look in the rearview mirror. I haven't driven past Ellsworth Drive since, but I looked it up last week, online. Property records. Number 46, our old house, sold in January 2023. New family, young couple. Number 44, Gerald's house, still listed as vacant. The listing has one note attached to it from the county assessor. Property continues to show active utility usage despite vacant status. Cause undetermined. The lights are still on. They're still on.
I don't know what was in that house. I don't know what Gerald Hatch called out to when he died alone at 4:17 a.m. I don't know what answered. But I think about that note sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet. They always come back to check. That's how it finds them. If you are watching this, and you've ever driven past a house that felt wrong, ever looked through a window and seen something that didn't make sense, ever had a neighbor who watched too long and said too little, don't go back. Don't check. Curiosity is an open door, and something is always waiting on the other side.